A crucial new report showing the U.S. economy shrinking for the first time in 3 years. The GDP fell at a rate of 0.3% as President Trump's massive and ever-changing tariffs rattle consumers and businesses. Moments ago, on his 101st day in office, the president tried to pin this data on his predecessor.
Core GDP, and this is, you probably saw some numbers today. And I have to start off by saying that's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, this is the quarterly numbers. And we came in and I was very against everything that Biden was doing in terms of the economy.
And I'm joined here by some amazing reporters, CNN's Elena Treen, Susan Glasser of The New Yorker, Nia Malika Henderson of CNN and Bloomberg, and CNN's very own Phil Mattingly.
The top line number is not one you should focus on. That is a reality here. What I think the most concrete takeaway from this GDP print is the economy going into April 2nd, the so-called Liberation Day, was solid. And we have seen that across the numbers, whether it's jobs, whether it's wages, whether it's investment. Going into that moment, it was solid. In preparation for that moment is where you saw kind of the core of how things were driven within this report, which is an absolute, almost once in a generation surge in imports. Mostly, economists believe, because companies were trying to front run
Trying to beat
those
the
tariffs, or
tariffs.
trying to pull forward essentially all their purchases. That private investment is real. The concern is that that's not actually going to be maintained over time. It's not going to be consistent because they're trying to pull it forward. Consumer spending, solid. But it did start to drop a little bit, and we've seen that through a number of surveys. So if businesses are trying to front run buying huge amounts of equipment, bringing things in, imports, and consumers are starting to slow down, and businesses aren't going to keep spending like that because of the uncertainty, because they don't know where the tariffs are going to be in the weeks and months ahead. The reality is, when economists look forward, including this report, they're saying this is a very, very uncertain moment. But the idea that this is all about Biden, or as Trump said in his Truth Social post, says nothing to do with tariffs, it is very much about Trump, and it has everything to do with tariffs.
And I also want to say, we did hear the president talk a lot about immigration at the beginning. We're going to talk about that after a break. But I do just want to stick with the economy, because that is far and wide the biggest issue for Americans right now, understandably. You mentioned the tariffs and how that is very much a factor here. Listen to what Peter Navarro, who is one of the president's top economic advisors, a bullish supporter of tariffs across the board, said on CNBC this morning.
That's the best negative print I have ever seen in my life. And the markets need to look beneath the surface of that. We had a 22% increase in domestic investment. That is off the charts when you strip out inventories and the negative effects of the surge in imports because of the tariffs. You had 3% growth. So we really like where we're at now.
You said it out loud. There is a negative effect. You were explaining why, but there is a negative effect right now on the economy as the economy braces for these tariffs to get even steeper, as they were. They're already in place.
Right, and there's some other things he said during that interview as well that I found super notable. He mentioned the exact point that you made, Phil, which is that so many companies and businesses were stockpiling on imports in preparation for tariffs. He tried to spin that as a good thing. He said, look, people are getting ready for the tariffs. Tariffs are a good thing as the economy moves on. We'll see that these tariffs end up being good for the economy. And then he also talked about DOGE, which I found interesting. He said some of this is also impacted by the contracting of what we're seeing in the federal government. And so he's trying to spin it that way. All to say, I can tell you, and I know this very clearly, that the White House is clearly trying to take a victory lap this week by marking the president's first 100 days. One area where there is a lot of frustration and anxiety, though, behind the scenes is on the economy. They know that they need to deliver good news to Americans soon. That's why you're starting to hear from some people like Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, some others. They're trying to preview that there's going to be some sort of deal very soon, whether on India this week or next week.
Yeah.
It's because they know they need to give some optimism right now.
They need a deal.
Exactly.
I had a Wall Street sort of executives say that to me point blank, that at least one deal, that will at least show that something is happening. And as I bring you both in, I just want to remind our viewers of what the American people think and feel, which is it's what it is. It's all about feeling when it comes to politics. About the economy, 71% say that they believe that the economic conditions are somewhat or very poor. 71%.
Yeah, fear and uncertainty might be a good way to scare illegal immigrants from coming to the country, but they don't very well when it comes to America's business leaders making important decisions about the future of their businesses. And, you know, look, obviously you can't be taking a victory lap when the American economy is contracting and not expanding. Let's just be real about that. There's no victory here. A man who's branded himself for decades in our national public consciousness as a deal maker not only is struggling, but he's made such wildly over-the-top claims. You know, we're 100 days into a presidency where he said he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. He can't, you know, despite making concession after concession, can't get Vladimir Putin to go along with his vision for that. When it comes to the economy, I think what's remarkable is that even after Trump's approval ratings have plunged, after all of our economic indicators have started flashing red since April 2nd, that quote unquote Liberation Day, we still can't say what exactly is the policy. We still can't say what's going on. And so you have this moment, Trump is in the cabinet meeting with his salesmen, pitchmen, pitching a vision, but no one, you know, can say with certainty what the actual policy is. What they can tell you is that uncertainty is already proving to be its own form of toxicity in our markets.
Yeah, and listen, as I think Trump benefited from the fact that the economy is a feeling for people. It is deeply personal. It's about what you do when you go to the Target or to Amazon and look at a price. Is it higher? Is it lower? Do you want to save a little bit now for fear that prices are going to get higher a little bit down the line? And so there's no amount of deals from India. There's no amount of talking about the GDP and saying that it's Biden's fault. That's not how people think about the economy. So this sort of salesman pitch that you saw them making about industries coming here and there's going to be a plant in Arizona, what does that have to do with whether or not I think I can afford sending my 2 kids to camp in the summer? If I have 2 kids, I only have one. She will be going to camp, but it's going to be very expensive. But that's how people are thinking about the economy. And so, you know, Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick with their bluster, it just doesn't work. And particularly because Donald Trump promised that prices would be lower immediately, right? And that there would be stability in this golden era, and that is not happening.
I just want to get one other point in here, which is on the politics of this. How much on this, just like pretty much everything else, the party has gotten behind Donald Trump. I mean, he was very clear. Tariffs is what he wanted, and that is what he is doing. The party has, in my time here, has been much more free trade. And that includes his former vice president, who decided to pen an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today. And here's part of what he said. Since the president announced his Liberation Day tariffs, the only thing America has been liberated from is trillions of dollars in investments. Mr. Trump's proposed tariffs would be the largest peacetime tax hike in American history, hammering consumers and driving inflation. Broad-based tariffs may scratch the populist itch, but protectionist economics are no substitute for principled conservatism. Real quick, Phil, what's going on here?
That was what the Republican Party was.
Yeah.
That, to be frank, is what the vast majority of Republicans on Capitol Hill still are, privately, in places where the president can't hear them. They agree with the kind of broader concept, particularly as it pertains to China on these issues, in terms of the approach that was taken, the scale of the approach that was taken, and what's transpired since. There's widespread disagreement. And yet a recognition that, one, because of Trump's grip on the party politically, but also because, man, we're in it.
Yeah.
Like, we got no other choice. This is where we're going. And that obviously is what they're stuck with.
Yeah, I think it's also the subtext is this didn't happen when I was the vice president because I made these arguments internally.